Attention New Hope fathers, we have a special weekend set aside just for you. On Saturday, June the 18th at 9 a.m., New Hope will host a Father's Day breakfast to honor you. The event will be held in our House of Hope and is open to the public, so mark your calendars. Limited seating is available, so be sure to register this week. The registration link will go out this evening via email, church app, and text. We will have a raffle, fellowship, and free food. So join us Saturday, June the 18th from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. right here at New Hope. Then on Sunday, we're in for a special treat. Pastor Parks Sr. and Pastor Parks Jr. will preach our morning services. And during the 11:30 a.m. service, we will have Daddy Talk. Listen in as our panel of men discuss the importance and issues concerning fatherhood today. Hear from biological dads, stepdads, goddads, older dads, and younger dads, the struggle they have and the fight to keep going. We're in for a treat on Father's Day weekend. Won't you join us? It begins on Saturday. See you here. Good news, New Hope family. We have a new app that makes staying connected much easier. New Hope Baptist Church brings all things New Hope to the tip of your thumbs. You can access live and recorded sermons, set up a recurring gift, and receive updates on all our activities. Text New Hope BC app to 77977 to download the app today, or visit the App Store on your mobile device and search New Hope Family AR.
New Hope, we invite you to get connected and stay connected to one of our many social platforms. We invite you to get connected on Twitter and keep up with the latest happenings at New Hope. Become our friend on Facebook and see what we've been doing in our community. Watch us on YouTube, where you can hear clips and sermons from Pastor Parks. New Hope Social Media, building faith, sharing love.
Church, this is the gift-giving season for many. Many people will receive gifts in all shapes, forms, and sizes. But one of the accessories to gift giving is gift wrapping. And sometimes the wrapping and the presentation of the gift receives more attention than the gift itself. Some gifts, church, come in bags. Others come in satin or mesh bowls. Other gifts come in boxes with our most attractive or favorite designer or logo on the box. Sometimes we can determine what type of gift we're going to receive based on what is housed in. Many women enjoy those brown and gold boxes that has a LV on the top of it. Something special when ladies see that bright blue bag that's written in silver letters that spells Tiffany's. There's something about gift wrap. But church, one of the gifts of the Advent season is the gift of joy. Joy for those of us who live in connection with God. Joy, church, is a internal, emotive, tremendous place to be. It's a place of tremendous pleasure, happiness, and expectation despite surrounding distresses based upon our closeness to God. Let me give you joy again. Joy is an internal emotion of tremendous pleasure, happiness, and expectation despite the surrounding trying distresses around us based on our connection with God. Church, can I tell you something? Joy is a choice. It's a matter of attitude, and it stems from one's confidence in God. May I park there for a minute, church? If you don't have joy, oftentimes you choose not to have it. And our joy is not based on some erroneous feeling that we make ourselves feel a certain type of way, Gerald, but our joy is based on the fact that God is in full control. The reality is, joy often comes in unattractive wrapping paper. I think I'll say that again. Joy often comes in unattractive wrapping paper, and we only come to discover and experience joy oftentimes in unsettling circumstances. You just don't have joy in a vacuum, but joy uniquely comes to us oftentimes through the rough and unsettling spots of our existence. Oftentimes you don't know you have joy until a challenge hits your life. You don't really know if you have joy until you had to deal with the uninvited, the unwanted, and sometimes the unfair. Listen, can I tell you something, church? Joy is not wrapped in bows and placed in designer boxes or wrapped in satin. Oftentimes, joy is discovered in the difficult moments of life. Habakkuk has something to tell us about joy. Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 17 through 19. Listen to how my Bible reads. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food. The flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God, the Lord, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer. He makes me tread on my high places. To the choir master with string instruments. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Church, I want to talk about, with the Lord's help in your prayers, the unique gift of joy. Church, Habakkuk here is a minor prophet with a major message. Habakkuk's name literally means one who clings or one who embraces. This prophet, church, offers a prayer to God, and he wrestles with this age-old question that many of us wrestle with, even those of us who may be on the periphery of God. Listen, we wrestle with this question: why does the righteous suffer amongst the wicked? Habakkuk says, God, I got a bone to pick with you because I see my people doing what's right. And why does it seem like the wicked are doing okay? It seems like the wicked don't even catch a cold. And I'm sitting here struggling with my bills. It seems like they do whatever they're big enough and bad enough to do, and if I think about it, something goes wrong. He says, why do they prosper amongst the righteous? And he pours his heart out to God, and earlier in chapter 3, God answers him, and God answers him, Pastor, in such a strong way that he leaves Habakkuk weak. God answered in a unique manner. Habakkuk, in the midst of his struggles, he embraces God even more. Can I tell you something? That's faith. Faith is not always God erasing your struggle. But faith is embracing God even more in the midst of your struggle. I want to help somebody today who may have the holiday blues and you are saying, I can't find any joy. Joy is not God always turning it around, but sometimes joy is God turning you around in the midst of a rough situation. The prophet empowers us through his example of how to have unquenchable joy through undeniable hardships. Listen, joy is not acting like it's not going on, but joy is saying, I won't let this steal my pleasure. I won't let it steal my sense of expectation because I'm still holding on to God. This is the take-home truth this morning, church. God allows life to cultivate within us faith-filled emotions over and above frustrated exacerbation. Listen, God lets life happen to you so your faith can be cultivated. Listen, God letting or allowing certain things to happen in your life is not God cursing you. It is not God forgetting about you. But maybe God steps back and permits some stuff to happen because he's trying to cultivate a faith in you instead of frustration. This is the deed to do. Permit tough seasons to produce an enhanced faith that leads to joy. Are you thinking with me today, church? The first thing we notice in this text is this: the reality of hard seasons. Listen, Habakkuk opens this prayer psalm. Habakkuk sounds like an economist giving a report. Listen to how he talks. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, and the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Listen, Habakkuk gives a dangerous report that's in the red. Listen, they are nowhere in the black, they are in the red, and these are 6 clauses that are sinned with severity. He says this: the fig tree don't blossom, then the fruit, then there's no olive that's producing. It gets worse and worse. It gets tougher and tougher. Figs were a delicacy. You can make it without figs. Grapes were a part of the staple diet. Those who drank, they drank wine on a daily basis. The olives were a universal household product that was used for cleansing, washing, and oil. Barley was a staple in the diet, and the flocks and the livestock were the John Deere tractors of that day that was often turned into food. Listen, all of this stuff is lost. Notice, this is Habakkuk's depressing economy report. Notice the loss of these things individually wouldn't be bad. You can make it without some figs. If just the olives is not growing, you can make it. If the tractor is down and your feet is still good, you can make it. But listen, Habakkuk reports that all of this stuff comes up at a loss all at one time. Can I push it this morning, church? Somebody can testify. You can handle one thing going wrong in your life. You can handle a little shortage, but it's something different when you are suffering from shortage and then sickness. And then when it moves from shortage, sickness, then depression. And then the depression leads to anxiety. You can deal with it if it's just your husband, but it's something different when it's your husband, your children, and the job, and your money is funny. It's different when it's one thing on top of the other. You get somebody and say, neighbor, I can handle when it's one thing. When it's one thing, it's just stress. But when there's one on top of the other, then that's a storm. It's something different when there's one. But church, troubles causes us to see the truth of our existence. Don't you miss this, church. Often we seldom to look at our lives truthfully. Because we oftentimes, when everything appears to be good, we equate good with success and stuff. We think that equates with spiritual favor. If you got stuff and success, you think God is on your side. But can I tell you something today, church? I just want to push it today. I don't want to go far. Prosperity is often the cosmetic to reality. You can have everything that life says you ought to have and still be sick. You can have a pocket full of money and still be bankrupt. You can be in a room full of people and still feel lonely. You can have on designer clothes and your soul is still naked. Can I tell you something today, church? Cultivating a life of joy is not ignoring the facts. Cultivating joy is not escapism. It is not some narcotic to numb you of your pain. Sometimes the first step to get to joy is saying, this is my reality. I'm jacked up. I don't read my Bible the way I used to read it. I don't feel God the way I used to feel God. I come to church and I don't feel good or God. And God, this is who I am. And maybe sometimes the church can learn a little something from AA when they say, hey, my name is such and such and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm sad. Hey, my name is this and I'm angry. Hey, my name is so-and-so and I have anxiety. Be truthful with where you are. You walking around acting all fake and funny. How you doing? I'm blessed all the time. Gee. All the time. I said, how you feeling, not how you are. The first step to joy is being real with where you are. Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas, who's the director of the PhD program at Christian Theological Seminary in Indianapolis, Indiana, he has a show where he interviews some of America's most gifted black preachers. And one day, the tables were turned. Dr. Gina Marcia Stewart of Memphis, instead of him being the host, she was the host, and he was being the interviewed. And she raised his famous question to him. Said, when was one of the hardest times where you had to preach? He sat back and he reflected. He said, the hardest time when I had to preach was when a fraction of the membership of the church where I led, they sued me and the church. And he said, I received the paperwork and I had to stand up on that Sunday morning and preach to my people. He says, I struggled all week long. I wanted to get somebody else to preach because I was just sapped. It was a sucker punch, but he said, I was left to deal with and to preach what I truly believed about God. Don't miss this, church. Life leads us to spaces and seasons where we have to face what we really believe about God. Don't miss this. Hard times strip us of everything except God. And can I tell you something, church? Difficulty often breaks the water for joy to come forward. Don't miss that. difficulty often breaks the water for joy to come forward. Can I tell you something? God's word for somebody is, instead of cursing and despising and seeing your hard season as unexpected and inconvenient, you have to learn how to realize that God may be breaking your water for joy to come forward. When difficulty comes, God may be getting ready to birth something out of your life. May I give you the second thing? What is our response to hard seasons? Listen to verse 18. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation. Habakkuk, based on his own findings, church, he knows how bad it is, but he doesn't give up. He responds in church, he responds personally. Let the church say personally. Habakkuk says, yet I will rejoice. This term rejoice means to have an intense emotive state. The source of Habakkuk's rejoicing is a heart that has been turned to God, and it is a heart that believes that God can handle his circumstances. Listen, Habakkuk determined to do more than simply rough it out. I want to talk to somebody here today. You've been taught all of your life to rough it out, and you think roughing it out gives you joy. But simply roughing it out, that just makes you miserable. You've learned how to manage your misery. But listen, Habakkuk says, I'm not simply roughing it out, but he says, I'm rejoicing because I'm rejoicing in the Lord, and my rejoicing often looks for the positive. And this is what he says, I'm not roughing it out. He says, Habakkuk says, while I'm in it, I'm allowing God to change me. That's when you know that you have joy. God, you may not change it, but I'm going to rejoice that even while I'm in it, you're doing something bigger in me. But can I tell you something? It's counterculture. Habakkuk says, I'm not rejoicing just to rejoice. And I like that because we live in a hyper spiritual society. He says, my focus is on the Lord. And often some people, you just determine to be happy, and you're really not happy. And when you do that, that's simply an act. That's like you living on what your mama told you. Now, don't embarrass me in public. So you keep telling yourself, don't embarrass me in public. And you just go through the motions. No, he says, I'm just not going through the motions, but I'm rejoicing in the Lord. Habakkuk has a relationship beyond quick and immediate provisions. Can I tell you something? Inward joy is not a result of outward increase. Don't miss that. Often our joy and outlook is based on our stuff. And oftentimes, church, when our stuff leaves, our joy disappears. Can I tell you something, church? Family can forsake you. Friends can shift on you. Status can always skip you. And sometimes your education can mislead you. And the question is, who is left when everything is taken from you? When everything in life is taken from you, I can guarantee you God is still left standing. So that's why you have to rejoice in God. Don't you find your joy in your money, because your bank account can go in the negative. Don't you let your joy be in your career, because they can downsize. But your joy has to be in the Lord. Maybe that's why Nehemiah said, the joy of the Lord is my strength. Don't you build your hope on what other people build their hope in. But can I go? And all I want to tell you is, don't let stuff and success be the weight of your faith. But then it's factual. It's personal. is countercultural, but it's also factual. Are you thinking with me today, church? Habakkuk focuses on just not on the person of God, but he also rejoices on the performance of God. It's factual, it's personal, it's countercultural, it's factual. He says, the God of my salvation. Habakkuk rejoices on the historical facts of what God has done. The trust Habakkuk has is in Israel's covenant keeping God. He's rejoicing in a God that keeps his promises, and that a God is still in control. It leads Habakkuk to know, I don't have the blessing now, but the blessing will eventually come. We must learn to refer and trust what God has done in the past. Because while you're leaning on what God has done in the past, it's the fuel for your faith and the basis of your rejoicing. Listen, church, you have to learn how to rejoice in what God has done, because if God has done it before, that means he can do it again. Can I tell you something today, church? I want to push this. God can let stuff slip from our hands as long as we stay in God's hand. What we're in is survivable. That's what I came to tell you. Don't you worry about what comes out of your hand. As long as you stay in God's hand, you can make it. And we can't solely live by human standards. Look at somebody and say, you can't live by human standards. You can't live on what the accountant says, what the economist says, and what doubtful people around you say. Listen, the believer does not live by human explanation, but we live by divine expectation. Look at somebody and say, I'm living by expectation. I know what the news says. I know what the economy says, but I'm trusting a God that's above the economy. And so I learn how to hold on to God's word while I'm in the storm. That's why Deuteronomy 8:3 says, and man shall not live by bread alone. Don't you live on success alone. Don't you live on stuff alone. But he says, but I live on every word that comes out of the mouth of God. This ain't in my script, but let me give it to you. What can you hold on to when you're going through the storm? I tell you what you hold on to. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I tell you what you hold on to. When you go through the waters, you won't be drowned. And when you go through the fire, you won't be burned. What do you hold on to? He'll prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. What do you hold on to? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, what do you hold on to? Now unto him who is able to keep me from falling and to present me faultless before his glory with exceeding joy. I wish I could get it out of my body the way I feel it in my mind. But let me close with this. Oh, I'm out of time. Let me give you the reinforcement for hard seasons. The prophet closes this prayer, this song of faith, on a high note. Habakkuk's final words are not words of despair, church. They're words of determination. Listen to them. God, the Lord is my strength. Oh, I like that. That's faith talk. We see Habakkuk's outer world didn't change. Can I tell you something? Let me ask you this question. Do you have a faith that can hold on to God when the stuff around you don't change? Habakkuk leaves us with this prayer. He's trusting that God's going to do it, but it hadn't changed yet. But though it didn't change his position. Habakkuk teaches us not to place our trust in nature in itself or our own abilities or our own skills. He says you have to trust in the God of nature and the God that's giving you the skills, in the God that is above it all. And listen, Habakkuk uses the strongest name for God that's in the Bible. He says this: God the Lord. This is Yahweh Adonai. It is the term that highlights God in power and majesty. And he says it's a God that will show his power and majesty when his people keep their end of their commitment. Can I tell you something? God says I can show up and show out in your life when I see that you hang in there with me. Habakkuk says I'm going to cling to God, and when I cling to God, God doesn't have a choice but to show up in my life. And can I tell you something, church? You don't have to know how God is going to show up, but if you hold on tight enough, you know that he's going to show up. Look at somebody and say, neighbor, I know you ready to let go, but tell them tighten your grip. Let me quit here. But then he gives us provision for the area. You got a personal affirmation, but he gives us provisions for the area. Habakkuk, he's fully acquainted with a God that's all powerful. Don't miss this. But God always gives us what we need for the area of life that we're in. God does not take us out of tough areas, but God will equip us with what we need to be successful. Don't miss this. Habakkuk uses this imagery of a deer. He says, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet. Listen, he uses this imagery. He literally says this. He says, God will give me the feet of a deer that ensure that I can keep my footing in the terrain that I'm in. Don't you miss this. Listen, God may not change the terrain, but he'll give you strength to endure the terrain that you're in. And that's what I like about God. God, you don't have to take me out, but God, give me what I need to endure. And is there anybody here at the 8 o'clock service that can testify that you are in a tough spot, but he gave you what you needed to endure? No, you didn't have what somebody else had, and you don't live where somebody else lived, and you don't have what somebody else has, but God gave you what you needed. But then he says this. He says, and he makes me to tread on high places. That's what I like about God. God says this: you weren't designed to stay in the dirt. He says, you may be down now, but I'll give you strength to make it to a high place. And I don't know where your high place is, and you don't know where my high place is, but God is in the business of saying, you've been in the dirt long enough, now let me lift you up. But look at this. I got to close. I got to get out of here like this. Listen, it says, look at the end of this prayer. It says, and to the choir master of the string instruments. Wait a minute, this was a prayer, and now it's a song. Habakkuk was praying to God, and he was giving his affirmation. But finally Habakkuk leaves his prayer, and somebody picks it up and says, this prayer ought to be used in worship. Somebody can testify that God has a way of transforming your prayerful pleas into worship. And somebody can testify that God can change your prayer into a song. Shake somebody's hand and say, neighbor, God can give you a song. You don't believe me. He gave Paul and Silas a song. Jesus died with a song on his lips. And God can give you a song for the dark spots of life. Shake somebody else's hand and say, neighbor, God will give you a song. Can I tell you what my song is? All night and all day
I didn't mean to go this far. The angels keep watching over me, my Lord, all night and all day. The angels keep watching over me. Shake somebody's hand and say, neighbor, he'll give you a song. God me, oh, thou great Jehovah, pilgrims through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, 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 feed me until I want no more. I got one more song. I've had some good days and I've had some hills to climb. I've had weary days and sleepless nights, but when I look around and think things over, my good days outweighed my bad days, and I won't complain. I'm sorry, y'all. I got one more song. Look at somebody and say, neighbor, I got one more song. Take them by the hand and say, neighbor, you can't sing for me and I can't sing for you, but tell them this is my song. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. Shout joy, joy, joy. I got joy. Yeah, 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 yes, yes. I got sunshine on a cloudy day when it's cold outside. I got the month of May. I guess you say, what can make me feel this way? Look at somebody and say, my God can heal my body. My God can turn my situation around. My God walks with me. My God talks with me. Be not dismayed. Whatever besides you, God will.